Isabel. I'm a junior. I'm an animal science major at the University of Maryland.
Hi, I'm Alex Mufson. I'm the Equine Director and Therapist at Chrysalis School and the owner of Three Rivers Horse Training.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Izzy.
So what does your daily life look like? So what responsibilities are in your day?
Yeah, so it looks a little different at a residential treatment center with an equine therapy program than it did training horses for the public. So right now, because I have a whole team of students doing a lot of the daily work, they're doing the feeding, they're doing any sort of medical care, daily maintenance, and I'm coming in and managing the barn, just making sure that there are accurate tabs on everything, that everybody's fed, watered, there's the right nutrition is going to each horse, and the barn is stocked, because I'm trying to teach all of the young women that I work with to be doing the actual care themselves. That's different than when you're running your own barn and you don't have a team of students that live on the property.
Yeah.
When I used to do that and I had a much bigger barn, the barn that I run now for therapy purposes is only 7 animals, but when I ran a training barn for the public, it's more like 25. And then you're managing staff to clean, and you're making sure you're feeding yourself, or you're doctoring, and you're doing all of the training as well. That's a whole different deal than when you're in a program where everybody lives on site.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what kind of classes do you wish you had taken in college to better prepare yourself for the job you have now?
So I did not go to school for anything horse related. I have a degree in feminist studies. The cool part of that degree is I, at the end, worked a lot on human-animal relationships, and I didn't work with horses on that, but I wrote and did a lot of theory work around what it looks like to be responsible in relationship with other species, and that was really valuable to me. What I tell everyone when I get asked that question, because especially when I was training for the public, now it's a little more clear cut because now I'm an animal therapist, so they understand I have a master's degree in clinical work and in social work, and so they know I'm applying that clinical lens to the animal program. Mm-hmm. But when I was training for the public and people would ask me that question and I'd say, I don't have a degree in horses, the true answer is, I think you're better off just getting on the ground and doing as much work as you can. So it's awesome when you take classes, you have to make sure you can apply it. Right. And so the more, I don't know if a program has internship opportunities or encourages field placements or just jobs on the side. Since I was literally in elementary school, I was jumping in to work at barns and had full-time jobs in every summer, really in my entire life, at a barn,
so you would
working with horses.
Experience is more important than taking some horse-related classes.
I think the horse-related classes are great, and I think it's awesome to know the nutritional stuff, the body stuff, anything you can do anatomy-wise will just, oh my gosh, you're going to use that. Business management, that's a huge deal. I've seen a lot of horse trainers and barn managers come in and out and fail because they don't have the business lens, because they were maybe really loved horses and they got really good at that, but they forgot that with horses come people.
Right.
So when it comes to the horses, you just get on the ground and do it. But when it comes to running the business, making sure that your business management skills are up to par and your psychology skills are up to par, because a lot of things come up with people and their horses that even if they're just there to take a riding lesson, you'll see a lot of tears. Right. So I think it's important. So that's why it's a complicated question, because I actually wouldn't change what I studied, which was human-animal relationships more theoretically. I did some business stuff, and then I have a master's in more social work, which is all psychology. But that had nothing to do with horses. Right. But it's helped me so much with animal business because I was on the ground learning the horse stuff by doing it. And that, I think, is what's really forgotten by people.
Yeah.
Business.
What is the part that you dislike the most about your job?
So in the past, as a horse trainer, I really found it challenging if I knew that the animal wasn't going to be as successful with the person that really owned them, because it's not really a fair world. The horses don't really get a say in who their owner is, just like we don't get a say in who our parents are. And so that kind of really stunk to watch really good horses who are trying so hard have to go home to people who maybe weren't as capable or trying as hard. I really didn't like that.
Yeah.
That's less of a challenge now because now the horses stay put and it's the students that rotate in the therapy that rotates. And so I see a lot less of that hardship. But it's still hard to watch the horses struggle when they get a new person and they have to take a lot on for the students in this case. So I think that's the part that I struggle the most in is like, how much can I ask of a horse's well-being? I do think my current job, because it's so clinical and the students are so awesome, they really take that into account, but I found that really challenging working with just the general public.
Okay. Do you feel like, as far as equine work goes, that it's too consuming, or does it relatively, do you have a balanced life career path? Like, are you spending a good amount of time
at home? Good question.
School?
When I was a horse trainer, no. When I was a horse trainer for the public, I wasn't caring for my barn and my horses. I was doing actual training, and then I was on the road teaching clinics all over the country, sometimes in Canada. And then in the winters, I would leave for a warmer climate so that I could train there. That was completely all consuming, and that was something that I learned from. I realized that wasn't the healthiest way to live my life. It also was very, very hard on my body. And I realized that was not super sustainable. And I will live with injuries my whole life now that I did from making those mistakes and not giving myself time to heal and being on the road so much in addition. Now I feel like I have a very good work-life balance with this barn that I manage, but that's because I learned those lessons the hard way. I think with horses and with people, and I would say it's more the people, you're always going to be asked for more. And people get very emotionally driven by their relationship with their horses. And if you don't have strong boundaries around your availability, they will, and I am not even joking, they will show up at your house. And so don't give out your address. But I think that's a really hard thing in the horse industry, because relationships are really important. The horse-human relationship, but also like the relationship with the trainer and the barn manager. That's why people are in it for the most part. They want a stable that they feel like, this is my other home and I feel really safe and grounded. The problem is that can be really taxing on the person doing it for a job. So yes, I do. And I learned that the hard way. So be careful.
All right. So is this job one you can make a living off of, or is it recommended to have a second source of income? And I understand this question might be a little bit difficult, like in your situation, but just
no, I can answer. Yeah. So if you want to be in the horse industry, you need to be very good. You need to be good, not just with the horses, but with the people. And you have to be willing to work really hard. I started a training facility right out of college. I was 21 years old, and I made a good living out of it. I've ended up living, I have a pretty house and I drive a nice truck, and all that is from riding colts and running a barn and clinic. Yes. So yes, it is possible. I worked really, really hard and was savvy about my business and very savvy with my money in order to make that happen. And I followed what the clients wanted from me rather than just saying like, oh, this is what I do. I really grew, and I grew fast. Now I run a barn in a therapeutic setting after getting a master's. That's a much more sustainable profession with boundaries, because, I say with boundaries because it can be overwhelming if you don't have those, but it's a much more sustainable profession because you're working within a bigger industry, which is residential treatment, and running an animal program for a treatment center is a totally different deal. But you need more education usually to do that than me being 21 and starting a training. That was all based on the fact that I had taught myself how to be an excellent horse person. Those are two different things. So yes, it's possible, and you are going to work really hard to be in the horse industry. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so this question kind of feeds into that. So I'm director now at Chrysalis. You work under a company. So how much power would you say you have over the horse program? Is it you or the company who makes big shots? Are they just doing the financial? You're doing everything else with the horses?
It's an excellent question. So I was always self-employed. I said, and you were around when I first started at Chrysalis, I said, no, because I had always been, in control of the business. I was very concerned about how the horses would be treated if I wasn't 100% in control. So I actually declined the offer until I was given full control of the program. That was part of what I negotiated for. I don't have control over the money. Sometimes that's really nice because it's not my money.
Right.
And I don't have to budget to make sure the hay is purchased and all of that. I think it's very hard to work under a company if you aren't given a lot of creative freedom to make sure that the horses are treated like horses and not like, you know, props at
Right.
that company. And I was not willing to be part of it.
Too,
Yeah.
like, I want to work for a company, but I kind of want to make it my own so that way I can kind of
Yes.
stay in what's going on.
It's unique though that I have so much power in this. And it hasn't always been easy. Sometimes people have forgotten and I've had to be rather stern, and I have always been willing to walk away because I worked for myself, and so I knew that I could walk away and start my own barn doing the same things if I suddenly couldn't align with my values under this company. So I don't want to use my experience as the end all be all. I think there's a lot of pros and cons for both, but I think ultimately you have to be good, and you have to have a lot of negotiating power to come into something and say, like, I know you're a company, but we're doing it my way, or I'm leaving. You have to be good enough that they care if you leave. So that is where it all goes back to that hard work. And I wouldn't have been good enough for that had I not run my own business first and had to hustle. Right. So this is not an industry for the weak of heart. You have to be ready to work.
Yeah. All right. What is just a good one? What's the favorite part of your job?
I mean, my current job, I love the girls that I work with. I have awesome horses. I have 6 or 7 that are always there. They're amazing. And I, of course, love my personal horses at home and all of that. But the reason that I have worked as long as I have in this treatment center is because I love the young women. They're inspiring and exciting, and it's super fun to watch them just learn about themselves and the horses all at once. And when there's a really amazing bond between a horse and a girl, that's really cool to see happen.
I know firsthand.
Yes.
All right. So what does success look like in being an equine director? How would you measure success?
Well, you want your horses healthy and you want your horses happy. I think it's really, really hard to do both of those things. Well, if you have an external goal, like being an animal therapist, or even if it's just training for someone else's, what they want their animal to do, it's very hard to always put the horse's well-being first. So to me, success looks like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do for my job, and I am not sacrificing the horse's emotional or physical well-being in any way.
Okay. I like that answer. Okay. Who in the equine world would you work with the most? So would you say that you work with the farriers the most, with your staff the most? What relationships are really key to have?
That's a good question. So I'm going to refer back to when I ran a bigger barn, because because I train my students to do so much now. It's a little bit unique, obviously. So now it would just be a farrier and a good vet. But when I ran a big barn, I would say you have to have a wonderful vet, and you have to know that vet inside and out so that you understand where they're coming from with their recommendations and you can make judgment calls. You have to have the great relationship with the farrier. That's really key. You do not want a farrier that you don't trust. And especially you want that farrier to be someone that you trust to be good to your animals, even if you're not there. That's very important because sometimes emergencies happen. I also think you need, especially in a training barn or a barn where horses are doing more than like an equine therapy barn, a lot of them, they're not doing as much physical work. But in a training facility where they are, good bodywork professionals. So whatever you find works for you. I had a woman that I worked so closely with that did craniosacral and all sorts of sports massage and things like that. I could not have run that barn without being able to call her as often as I could. She was very, very important because sometimes you get issues that seem emotional and behavioral from the horse's perspective, but are physical, but they're not something that a vet is going to fix. It's something that a body worker is going to fix.
It's like physical therapy kind of thing.
Yes, it's very, very important. So those I think are my three, but then you want a good accountant,
Yeah.
and you want a good mechanic, and you want a good hay provider. Like, oh my gosh, you need a good hay provider. All of that kind of thing. You need to know the person at the feed store so that if they're low, they always know, like, oh, I shouldn't be low on, the thing that Alex buys 10 bags of every 2 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
you need these relationships, because otherwise things can come crashing down really fast.
Okay, do you need a certain degree or licensing to obtain this job? I think we kind of talked about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
When you ran your own barn, you didn't necessarily have anything there, but coming into
Yes.
your Chrysalis, you need a master's or something to.
Yeah, so if you want to train horses for a living, you just have to be really good at it. And you have to be really good at it, and good at telling people you're good at it and convincing them to give you a shot, and then you have to prove it, and then be good at relationships. That's the industry standard. There's people who have equine science degrees, there's people who don't. If you want to manage a barn in any sort of bigger setting, like for me, it's in a residential treatment setting. So I am also executing the therapy. I'm not just the barn manager. I'm
Right.
also the animal therapist. And so you need a master's for that. But if you just want to manage a barn at, like, let's say a huge facility of, like, 100 racehorses or something like that, you probably do need a business degree plus maybe nutrition or sports medicine or whatever it is that barn specializes in. You want to bring that to it. That's very different than being the owner trainer. So I think it really depends. If you're looking to be the owner trainer, that's not the same as there's 5 trainers working at that barn and you're in charge of nutrition plans for every horse. Like,
Exactly.
those are very different management positions.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is more of just a personal question, but is there anything about my personal background or personality that that would make me a good or bad fit for the position?
Well, you hustle, and I like your hustle, so I'm pretty sure that would be no problem. You're also good at connecting with people, and I think that's key. I think my biggest worry for you would be that you set appropriate boundaries so that they're not just sucking you dry, because you are friendly and lovely, and people are going to be like, oh, she can talk all day about my problems. And you're going to be like, I can totally offer so much support. I'm so good at this. And I'm going to be like, Izzy, you are actually the barn manager, not their therapist. Recommend they get a therapist. So that would be my only concern, but it's also not a concern. It's also something that would make you really good
Yeah,
at it.
but it could be a concern.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think you really have the personality type for it, because people go to barns and they want to see the person that's friendly and they want to feel welcome. And I think you'd be really excellent at that. And I also know that you care so deeply about the horses that I think that you would not be one to cut corners. And that is very important. And you know enough about where the horse is coming from that you would be like, I don't think this is right that we're doing this right now. And I think you would be an advocate for the horse, which is what a lot of people forget when they get into this job, because they start being an advocate for the humans. But humans, they have got voices. They can advocate for themselves. The horses need someone on their side. But I
Exactly.
think you would do that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, so what traits do you feel you have acquired because of this job? And then what traits that do you have that already made you good
I think this job, starting with when I ran my own business, it helped me with boundaries. I think if there's one thing that I got better at, it was knowing that I could say no to things, and that it was 100% on me to do so. Otherwise, people were going to take whatever they could take that helped them. And so saying no, not just for the horses, I was always pretty good at saying no, this isn't good for a horse, but saying no, I just need to be done working for today. That was something that wasn't always easy for me. So I acquired really good boundaries, and that's why now I feel like I have a very healthy work-life balance, but that was the biggest learning curve for me. And what was the second part of the question? I want to make sure I get the
at it?
wording right.
What traits did you have that you already made you good at the job? So what would make a good
Sure.
director?
Yeah, I mean, I think being personable and connecting with people, and then being really good at, like, the horse behavior stuff is important, but you also just need to be able to pull out of the back of your brain, that injury happened, this is what I do. Like, the better barn managers are the ones that most of the time don't have to call a vet. they can do it themselves. And like, you know, it has to be pretty extreme for me to not be like, oh, I can fix that problem on a horse health wise, or something like that I just can't have access to the actual like drug that's that, or, you know, and I can't do surgery, but like, you know, the everyday stuff. I learned that really, really young. I was lucky enough to start, I was hanging around a barn at 3, a big show barn. And so I did that my whole career basically. And so until I started my own barn. And while I started my own way as far as how to actually deal with horses, the just nuts and bolts of growing up in like 100+ horse barn where like horses were just constantly ripping themselves up, and just like you were basically like 14 and they're like, figure it out how to fix that horse. It's like, I'm not a vet, I'm 14. And they were mean horses because they were unhappy. So learning all of that and being really good at just fixing the problem, that I came to the party with from all of that. And I would recommend anybody who wants to run a barn, they get really good at that stuff, because you will always have a job if you can doctor an injured horse.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, and then last question: would the job that you have at Chrysalis be a job to use as a stepping stone to like? How do I word this better? Would you recommend starting off as at Chrysalis and then moving into a bigger barn, or would you say that having a bigger barn and then moving to Chrysalis was a better decision for you?
I think you have to decide on your goals. For me, I wanted to move more into the clinical health of humans, and that's why I did it. And I did that because my clients in my previous barn started saying, oh my gosh, working with this horse is bringing up stuff for me. And I got to thinking like, oh, maybe I should be reversing how I approach this. Instead of doing therapy with the horses, I should do therapies with the humans, and that would make the horse's life better. So that's why it happened for me. If you're looking to work in a treatment center or something like that, I think this is the right way to go. Even if you don't have a master's, just try to find a place where you can just be the barn manager and work under the equine therapist or under whoever's running the clinical program. If your goal is to run a major training barn, that's a whole different deal. Then I would go work for major barns or whatever it looks like that your goal is, and I'd just start wherever they would let you and work your way up. But those are two totally different goals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I have for our interview.
Yay.
Hang on for just a second so I could just press
thank you.
record. But thank you so much for doing this interview, Alex.
That was awesome. I'm so happy to do it.
Thank you.